Welcome back, everyone, to Dragonwings. We are going to be finishing up here soon. It is so exciting. We are now on the final chapter, which is chapter 12, and it is titled Dragonwings. This goes between September of 1909 to June of 1910. If you remember the last time we read, some crazy things went down. Black Dog shows up after all these years and is still trying to find any possible way he can to get money, including steal from his family. So he was there and Moonshadow walked in and he was rummaging through all of their stuff looking for their cash. And Black Dog just absolutely attacked Moonshadow, this time with a knife to his throat. Luckily, Windrider showed up just in time. And even though Moonshadow said to his father, do not give him the money, do not show him where it is, Windrider gave him the money to protect his son. And so now they're struggling to pay rent. They can't afford to keep Dragonwings. The dream is really, really over. But in the last sentence on page 287, it's so beautiful. Moonshadow says, poor Black Dog. It's amazing that he feels sorry for him, but poor Black Dog. There was some beauty to life after all, even if it was only the beauty of hope. So that shows us that these characters still have hope in their dream, and that really is a beautiful thing. Let's get started on reading chapter 12, the final chapter on page 288. It starts like this. I do not know when I fell asleep, but it was already way past sunrise when I woke up. The light crept through the cracks in the walls and under the shutters and seemed to delight, especially in dancing on my eyes. Father lay huddled, rolled up in his blanket. He did not move when the knock came at our door. I was still in my clothes because it was cold. I crawled out of the blankets and opened the side door. The fog lay low on the hill. Tendrils drifted in through the open doorway. At first I could not see anything but shadows, and then a sudden breeze whipped the fog away from the front of our barn. Handclap stood there as if he had appeared by magic. He bowed. There you are. He turned and called over his shoulder, Hey, everybody, they're here. I heard the clink of harnesses and the rattle of an old wagon trying to follow the ruts in the road. Toiling up the hill out of the fog was Red Rabbit, and behind him I saw Uncle on the wagon seat. The rest of the wagon was empty, I suppose to give Red Rabbit less of a load to pull. Behind the wagon came the company, with coils of ropes over their shoulders and baskets of food. I ran down the hill, my feet pounding against the hard, damp earth. I got up on the seat and almost bowled Uncle over. For once, Uncle did not worry about his dignity, but caught me up and returned my hug. Ouch, he said, and pushed me away. He patted himself lightly on the chest. I'm not as young as I used to be. Then Handclap, Lefty, and White Deer crowded around. Am I ever glad you're here, I said. Poor father. Uncle held up his hands. We know. That's why we came. But how? Why? I was bursting with a dozen questions all at once. Why, to help you get that thing up to the top of the hill, Uncle said. Why else would we close up our shop and take a boat and climb this abominable hill, all on the coldest, wettest day ever known since creation? But you don't believe in flying machines. I still don't, Uncle said sternly, but I still feel as if I owe you something for what was done to you by the man who once was my son. I'll be there to haul your machine up the hill, and I'll be there to haul it back down when it doesn't fly. We were all getting fat anyway, White Deer said, especially Uncle. It might be easier to rent a team of horses and a wagon from a demon, I warned. Who wants their wagons and their lazy horses? Uncle asked airily. But you have only one horse and we'll need a team. Uncle swept his hand around the company. When a lot of the demons' fathers were too lazy to work their mines, we took those mines over and made them pay by the sweat of our brows and the ache in our backs. And when the demons were too scared to go into the mountains to build the path for their trains, we went and dug up whole mountains. Between Red Rabbit and us, we'll carry your flying machine to heaven and back if we have to. Call it our penance. We don't want to come back in our next lives as dogs because we felt no shame. Uncle held me off at arm's length. But look how tall you've grown. And how thin, White Deer said. And ragged, Lefty fingered a patch on my pants. We've been doing all right, I insisted. Well, you haven't starved to death or broken your necks, Uncle observed, which was more than I ever expected. Now, he clapped his hands together. Come, I'm getting cold. We helped Uncle down from the wagon. Wait outside for a moment, Uncle said to the others. We went into the barn. Uncle planted his fists on his hips and looked around. By the magic hairs of Monkey's tail, you've been living in this smelly, drafty place? For the last 3 years. You're both crazier than I thought, Uncle pointed up at the large, dark shapes of the glider models turning on their strings. What are those? Models of Dragonwings. I pointed at our flying machine. For a moment, I thought the thing had whelped. Father sat up, blinking sleepily. Uncle and I walked over to the stove. Uncle coughed politely, and when he saw him, Father jumped to his feet and began to brush some of the dirt off his shirt. Uncle took off his hat, inspecting the wall for dust first before he hung it on a nail. I didn't know you were going to come, Father said. Of course you didn't. Neither did I until last night. And how were we supposed to get word to you when you live off in the wilds? It's only the foothills, Uncle. It might as well be in the wilds. Uncle walked past Father, ducked under some models, and slipping between the wall and the wing, eyed Dragonwings critically. How will that thing ever carry you? It's quite capable of carrying my weight. Father came forward eagerly to point at the motor, provided that the motor can move me through the air at a certain speed. Uncle put his hands delicately to his forehead. Don't try to explain. I understand what you are saying now, less than if you had told me the Buddha came down and picked it up and hopped around the hills with it. If you just came to laugh, Father began, bristling. I came to help, Uncle snapped. Not because I believe in your crazy dream. Call it an old man's whim if you like. But then Uncle relented for a moment. And we didn't come to laugh. There will be those among the Tang people who will laugh. But now they will have to laugh at all of us, for we'll share in your folly. All of them, Father, I said. All the company came. Father turned now to see the silent, smiling company in the doorway. Father scratched the back of his head and then grinned. Well, don't just stand there, boy. Get the water boiling for tea. Lots of water. We sat in the dirt or on the mats near the stove. Father used firewood lavishly, and we shared around the meat dumplings and cups of steaming tea. Well, we'll get to see Dragonwings fly once before we lose it, Father said with a laugh. Don't worry about losing it either, Uncle said. We'll give you the money to pay your rent, too. Call it a loan, a compensation. He wagged a finger at Father. And don't give me any pig-headed reasons why you can't take it. Pride's always been the great sin of our family. Look on it as an act of charity to accept our money, White Deer said. It would make us all feel much better. Father considered that for a moment. He set down his cup and looked around with a smile. It's not a shameful thing to take money from friends, and you are my friends. I thought I ought to go it alone with just my son, but I was wrong. I'll own up to it. Good, Uncle said, because we dropped the money off on the way up. But how did you know the amount or where my landlord lived? Father asked. And how? We have our ways, Uncle said with a secret smile. Now, show the others this magnificent machine that's about to carry you to the moon. The others all walked around Dragonwings, while Father explained things between bites of meat dumpling, trying to convert the jargon of aeronauts into common speech. It was not until 2 hours later that we got to start. Father threw off the crossbar and swung the wide barn doors open. We hardly ever used them, using the normal-sized side door instead, so the barn doors creaked on their hinges as if reluctant to open. The sun had burned through the fog by that time. It looked as if we were going to be a hot day later. Handclap backed the wagon into the barn, and we put the tailgate down and propped some boards against the wagon bed so we could use them like a ramp. Then, using a system of ropes and pulleys hung from the rafters, we hauled Dragonwings onto the wagon bed. I could only compare the heavy weight of Dragonwings to the light pair of wings that Father had worn during his visit to the Dragon Kingdom. The magic of this land only imperfectly captured the magic of the dragons. Gently, coaxingly, Handclap made Red Rabbit head out of the stable. For the first time, Dragonwings emerged out into the open world. Father pointed up the hill. We'll go to the very top. Uncle looked dubiously up the steeply inclined hill. This hill, he noted, is a very steep hill. If you're feeling too old, you can stay here, White Deer said. No, Uncle glared at White Deer. I can still climb. I was only thinking of you, old man. Maybe Uncle has a point, Handclap said. Maybe a less steep hill? No, Father finished, lashing Dragonwings to the bed of the wagon and jumped down. It has to be this one. The winds are right. Ah, well, it's the winds, old man, White Deer said. Maybe we'd be better to hire a team of horses, Father said to Uncle. Didn't I say the company would take your machine up to the hilltop? Uncle said. It would have made much more sense to have hired a team or even 2 teams of horses, but it was a point of honor now with Uncle for the company itself to take the flying machine up to the hilltop. And perhaps Uncle wanted to make up to us for all the time we had been living out here like this, trying to prove he was wrong about our never being able to fly. Uncle added, I'll get your machine up to the top of the hill if I have to carry it on just my back. White Deer slapped Father on the arm. No use arguing with the old man. White Deer lifted a coil of rope out of the wagon, laid his arm through it, and went to the front of the wagon to begin tying lines there. We would pull alongside Red Rabbit. When everything was ready, we took our places. Handclap was on the wagon seat because Red Rabbit was most used to him now. White Deer and Uncle were on Red Rabbit's left on one rope. Father and I were on another on Red Rabbit's right. Lefty would push from behind. White Deer tied the rope around his waist. You sure you want to do that? Father asked. Supposing Red Rabbit panics? White Deer tested the line. I could outrun even a panicked Red Rabbit. He's almost as old as Uncle, you know? No one, Uncle declared, is as old as me. Uncle took his place behind White Deer, and Father made me get in front of him near Red Rabbit's head, just in case Red Rabbit panicked anyway. Ready? Father asked. The company chorused they were. Then let's go, Father said. Hee-yah! Handclap shouted and cracked the reins against Red Rabbit's rump, and he started forward. We paced along beside him, passing through the garden and the orchards. Father and I had cleared away any brush or trees on either side of the path that might have hurt Dragonwings. We had even taken down the gate and part of the fence on either side just to make sure Dragonwings would pass through safely. But when Handclap swung the wagon onto the road leading to the top of the hill, Red Rabbit balked. Come on, Handclap shouted. He shook the reins over and over. I slipped a cube of sugar into my pants pocket before we left. I took it out now and offered it to Red Rabbit. He sniffed it, and then his great yellow teeth closed over it delicately. I felt his warm, moist breath below on my wet wrist. He wanted more. His ears shook ingratiatingly. I'll give you more, I whispered, after we've gone to the top of the hill and back. I took one hand off the rope to stroke his nose. Please, Red Rabbit, I know it's asking a lot, but please pull. Pull as you've never pulled before. Red Rabbit swung his head back to the road and leaned forward against the harness. Now help Red Rabbit, Uncle called. We strained at the ropes. I stumbled and got up. I stamped at the ground this time, getting better footing. Slowly, ever so slowly, the wagon began to creep up the hill. The ropes burned at my hands so that the rope fibers seemed to brand my skin. And Dragonwings, its wings waving over either side of the wagon, lurched forward. Foot by foot, we pushed and pulled the wagon with Dragonwings up the hill, its wings dipping and bobbing as if it were tensing itself. Easy, easy, Father called anxiously from the side. He was afraid of the wings breaking. And for a moment, I hated Dragonwings. For as light as we tried to make it, it was still very heavy for only one old horse and several men and a boy. And I hated Dragonwings, not for what it had cost both my parents and me, but just for being so fat and heavy. I was beginning to be afraid for Father when he tried to fly in it. Uncle began a chant that the Tang men had used nearly 40 years ago when they were building the paths for the demons' trains. And the rest of us, hauling in rhythm to his chant, began to find it was easier. I would say, too, that Uncle pulled the hardest of any of us. And all of a sudden, I saw that if life seems awfully petty most of the time, every now and then, there is something noble and beautiful and almost pure that lifts us suddenly out of the pettiness and lets us share in it a little. It did not matter whether Father flew or not. It was enough that the company had come. And that's where we're going to pause today. We're going to be finishing up Dragonwings when we read tomorrow. I can't wait to see if Father's able to fly or not. We'll find out soon. See you next time.